Hi, everyone. It's Lindsay Baker. I'm here with Duncan McNair of Save the Asian Elephants. Duncan, we were just looking at some footage about what they go through in PAJAN. Can you talk a little bit about that, what the baby elephants go through, and what's going on? Why isn't this being stopped?
Well, these are very good questions that we often ask ourselves at Stay. And the tragedy of PAJAN, often described as the cruelest of all practices in tourism, is that the baby elephant is snatched from the wild, from its mother and its herd. The mother is often killed trying to protect it, taken away into captivity, isolated, starved and dehydrated. And then over many weeks, it's placed in a cage and beaten and stabbed and ripped with iron tools and hooks and knives, beaten with planks, to break its spirits, to make it easy for use in tourism, for incarceration and all sorts of unnatural activities. It's quite unnecessary because an elephant has extraordinary cognitive abilities. It can be taught by what's called positive reinforcement, just as it has been down the centuries. And this new brutality practiced in the tourist profession is a new manifestation, simultaneous really with the explosion in package holidays over the last 50 or 60 years. And the brutality is reinforced through the life of the elephants in tourism to quite pointlessly, but gratuitously, to terrify it, to make it do things without any delay, whether it's unnatural activities like, frankly, riding, because an elephant's a wild animal. In the wild, it wouldn't admit a person on its back any more than a lion or a tiger would, and to make it do handstands and play football and washing and all these sorts of things. It's really deeply brutal. And sadly, many baby elephants don't survive the PAJAN when it's meted out to them.
So they just die right before they, while they're still infant. How old are they, literally?
Well, they're often just a few months old, 4 or 5 months old, these are the baby elephants, and they often die during the process of heart attacks. This one we're looking at is slightly older, but it's a calf elephant. This is a still from a hideous video that is so brutal. And this brutality, as I say, continues throughout the life of the elephant in captivity. So the elephants are paying a heavy price for our tourist use of them.
Yes, and we also earlier talked about the tourist dangers. Sorry, I went to the wrong slide here. And dangers to humans, and that seems to be something that is growing. It says here, they also transmit TB. Oh my goodness! Yes. So talk a little bit about the human dangers, if you could.
Well, absolutely. There are dangers to humans in this close confinement, close contact elephant tourism. Elephants exhibit various so-called zoonotic diseases, those that jump from animals to humans. One of them is TB. Elephants tested in a recent sample, nearly 1/4 had TB. And those are passed routinely to people close to them, such as their so-called mahouts, their handlers, and on to tourists. Of course, we're living in the middle of a global pandemic of coronavirus. The evidence is being slowly established, but we can't say categorically that it is a zoonotic disease, but the signs are very likely that it is. And there is a history of course, of many of these airborne zoonotic diseases and others, the HIV/AIDS, SARS, Ebola, all have originated from the abuse of wildlife. And when you imagine a tourist place in somewhere, or the way they're held and beaten and then held back for use in tourism across Southeast Asia, these are terribly unsanitary situations where the elephant's immune system is broken down by the beatings and by the lack of being able to exercise properly. And so they shed these diseases very readily. That is one big danger, ever more acute now for humans and tourists. The other one is that elephants are deadly dangerous, and when abused, they attack. And one of the things that the tourist industry has suppressed is the extraordinary number of attacks, both fatal and otherwise, by abused elephants pushed beyond their endurance, who attack and kill. And we have a tragic video of a venue called Nong Nooch in northern Thailand, where we interview a woman whose sister sadly was killed in front of her.
Let's play that again for the people that were in here earlier, because we have a new audience.
Every year, thousands of people visit Nong Nooch Village Park for elephant displays. Teams of handlers torture and beat both babies and adults daily.
So its tusk went into me.
Yeah.
Its right tusk, the trunk threw Andrea back onto the concrete. It then pulled its head back in and then repeatedly attacked. We got to the hospital, we think roughly around 4 p.m. And she died on the operating table around 8:30 that night.
That's good.
And Duncan, we have about 15 minutes. I'm going to give you the floor to talk about what you want. We want to show the petition, and I'm going to type that in right now if I can, or I know it's in there already. I also put the website in. So go ahead, because we got cut off, but I do want you to come back on. So go ahead and talk about some of the things you think are the most important. We have like 15 minutes left.
Okay, thank you, Lindsay. Well, elephants, the starting point is that elephants are extremely important to the environment and to our world. A time when natural habitats of forests and so on are ever depleting, the elephant, known as the mega gardeners of the forest, they replenish and nourish the forests through their droppings, through their destruction of old trees to make way for new trees to hit the canopy, and so on. And they play an extraordinarily important and indeed a unique role. They are a keystone species. As Prince William said not long ago, we destroy the Asian elephants at our own great peril. We too, all species, depend upon the forests to combat climate change, to contain carbon, and the ever diminishing forests and the habitat of the elephants has the risk of proving deadly over time. So they are an important species in that sense, quite regardless of their inherent value to the world. What we say is that there should be, we at STAY seek to focus on what we really think is achievable here in the West. And we think a great deal is, because a great deal of harm is being done by the West sadly in driving up and feeding this insatiable demand for use of elephants in tourism. Their numbers are collapsing. In the late 19th century, there were millions of elephants. Now there are barely 40 to 45,000, both in the wild and in captivity together. And the elephants, of course, suffer extreme abuse in their captivity. That is not necessary. However, what we say is that there should be a movement from grossly unethical, where the elephants are horribly compromised, to ethical, to genuine sanctuaries. These exist. There are plenty of them around Southeast Asia. The defining characteristics of a genuine sanctuary are that the elephants are free to exhibit their natural behavior in a herd environment at a safe and respectful distance from humans. Now, there are many models of these that exist in India, in Thailand, and elsewhere that do perfectly well. And indeed, some of them have taken in abused elephants from other circumstances in tourism and so on. And we fully support those. We stand against the reckless and brutal tourism. In the United Kingdom, we are pressing upon government for new legislation to ban the advertising, sale, or promotion of unethical Asian elephant-related tourism. That policy, one of our policies, has enormous public support. it appears to be over 90% of the population now support that new law. And we're urging it upon government, despite the efforts of those who represent, particularly one representative body that has been lobbying government relentlessly, but we think thoughtlessly. And it is really shocking that that representative body, which is seeking the ear of government, itself has members who are sending tourists to some of the most brutal of all the resorts and some of the most dangerous as well. Stay is about to publish its research databases, which are the product of several years' research by our team of lawyers and others. And those will be published shortly. And
maybe you can come on when you do have those. I'd love to have you back on.
Absolutely. They show a really shocking state of affairs where hundreds and hundreds of companies, we've looked at about 650 companies, of whom just under 500 are sending British tourists to ruthless and brutal resorts. 1/4 of those are members of this big representative body that I've mentioned that associates with the British travel agency business. Mm-hmm. And we call them UEVs, unethical elephant venues. We selected a sample of 7 of the most brutal of all, and those have a huge representation. Huge numbers of members of this association that is talking to government are sending tourists to those very worst places, one of which is Nong Nooch that featured in the film just now.
Yes.
A good deal of this is enabled by the lack of public awareness.
Right.
So that this iconic and wondrous creature, so close to the end of its days on Earth, is shrouded in mystery as to the horrors that really befall it. And what Stay is trying so hard to do is to drive up public awareness everywhere. In the UK, of course, but also in the US and across the world.
What can people do to help? Duncan, we have 4 minutes left. Yeah. What can people do to help? And please, we want them to go to your website. It's can you do it really quickly? I'm sorry, I'm flabbergasted.
stae.org.
Right.
stae.org.
And there they can sign the petition, right? Go ahead.
They can sign the petition, and if they're in the UK, they can sign our parliamentary petition. They should challenge holiday providers, travel agents, about what they do, both on and offline. Do they send people to elephant riding resorts? They should not, and you should turn your back on them. They should research resorts that they are thinking about going to and speak to Stay. They should write to their parliamentarians, to their lawmakers, their elected representatives, and they should write to the Indian High Commissioner of their country to complain. They should get close to Stay, introduce us to new audiences, and very importantly, use social media, possibly the single most important ally that the elephants may have. And of course, introduce new audiences to Stay. I'll be coming to the US fairly soon. I'll be doing some public speaking. We hope very much to have the opportunity to address audiences in the States, as we do in the European Parliament and elsewhere. And above all, talk to your friends and family, get the word out there. It's not too late, but we must turn our back on unethical tourism. Absolutely. And urge new law to protect the elephants by regulation.
Yeah, that's so important. So everyone, please go to the website, that's stae.org, stae.org. Also sign the petition. Contact the legislators, all of the things we just asked for. Duncan, what are your last words here? We've got we've only got a few. No, actually, we have 7 minutes left. What is wrong with me? You've got 7 whole minutes here. What should we talk about? Should we quickly show the little petition movie so people can see that? Let's run that. Yeah, we have more time than I thought. they go to that petition, they can see any of those videos. There were a list of links.
Absolutely, yeah. And so I think I would say that we must start challenging the tourist industry and challenging our respective governments to introduce new legislation to ban the advertising, promotion or sale of unethical Asian elephant related venues. STAY has been asked by government to produce a parliamentary bill. We've done so. We're now urging them to pursue that. The elephants at the present rate do not have unlimited time. And it's tragedy, really, that the elephants who've been on this earth from way, way longer than human beings, way back millions and millions of years, the idea now that they are close to the very brink of extinction through the hand of man, not through any act of God, not through any requirement or necessity of evolution, but through the brutal hand of man, and only some people, is really appalling. And I'd also say that the tourist company, tourist industry, must leave behind often, not always, reckless ways, very reckless ways, and it must think now, what danger is it exposing both its paying customers to and all those people who work with the elephants in India, who are driven to a lot of this sort of work when they could easily be working in ethical circumstances, in genuine sanctuaries. They are putting many humans at deadly risk as well. They have, I'm sorry to say, the travel industry in the main has not been responsible in making clear to tourists and to the market that elephants are wild animals. They're very dangerous. They're super intelligent, but their behavior is often unpredictable. And often they react violently when not expected, usually under stress or extreme abuse. Yeah. And people don't realize that, but that's the story of the Nong Nooch film that we've seen, and of so much else evidence, so much more evidence that STAY has gathered. So I hope you're going to, everyone, please keep an eye on what STAY is doing. Please support us and tell others about it. Keep an eye out for the abundance of very shocking evidence of the broken promises and of the numerous attacks and of the many household names, I'm sorry to say, in the travel industry that are driving up demand and profiteering from these terribly unethical, brutal venues. I was said to be the first Westerner ever into the elephant training camps in southern India, which I call the elephant death camps. And it's not something that I will forget very soon at all. And I think, in a way, every legislator who's asked to consider this topic, certainly every CEO of a travel company operating in Southeast Asia, and really everyone should see what is happening to the elephants, both in their initial training and in the terrible, miserable lives that they're forced through in the name of
this elephant being beaten for nothing, right? You showed an elephant being beaten for no reason, just to break the spirit further.
To break the spirits. And I'm afraid there's a good deal of macho amongst the young mahouts, I'm sorry to say. There's a good deal of that. I feel very sorry for them as people who, in some ways themselves, are economically victims of the system. Yeah. And they resort to all sorts of things in their ways of life which are not happy ones. That need not be so. They should be properly looked after in these genuine sanctuaries that need people to maintain the sanctuaries in various different ways. That should be the future for the elephants and for tourism.
Well, Duncan, I certainly hope that this does get people to start becoming more aware in this area in the U.S., and we will continue to have you on. I would love to have you on again, maybe in a week or two, whenever you feel
delighted.
To come back and not be so rushed. But there is so much to do, and the good news is we can help. And there
Yeah,
will be links
absolutely.
put up here, and we can help through social media right now, this moment we can start in. So
Well, I'm grateful, Lindsay. We will be publishing our database of material within a very few weeks, probably by the end of this month. And I would be delighted to come back and to draw your attention and the viewers' attention to the highlights, really the lowlights, and to show why the status quo is a disaster for elephants and for humans, and what the solutions are. They're staring us in the face, and we must grab them.
Okay, Duncan, we have to go now because there's another show coming right up, folks. So thank you so much for watching. Please take action on this topic, these poor baby elephants. And I will see you next week on the Action Hour at 10 a.m. Thank you for watching. Bye-bye. And thank you, Duncan.
Thank you very much.
For coming on. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Hope to see you again.
Absolutely, we will. Bye-bye.
Lovely to see you. Bye-bye.